What kind of country do we want to see? One where families can afford housing and groceries? Where everyone can access healthcare? Where workers can support themselves and their loved ones? And where every person is treated with dignity and each of us has a say? But families across our country are hurting right now. Our faith calls us to respond with love for our neighbors. We'll put that love into action by voting this fall and beyond. People of faith are showing up to vote this November, inspired by the common good. Join us. Visit the link to learn more, register to vote, and be ready for Election Day.
Welcome everyone to our See.Love.Vote virtual launch party. I am Lori Carafone, Executive Director of Network. Network Advocates is very excited to launch our See.Love.Vote education campaign with you tonight and to share it with people all over the country. This education campaign would not be possible without you and our 52 partners here tonight. So thank you for being here. This nonpartisan 501c3 education campaign begins with the fact that we all want to feel seen. It is a basic human need to know that someone else understands and even shares our joys and our sorrows and our dreams for a better future. That is why See.Love.Vote begins with seeing our neighbors and then responding with love through concrete action, including by voting. Together, we can make sure everyone has the tools they need to be informed and energized voters. We know that through civic engagement, we can have a say in the decisions that determine the future for hundreds of millions of people in the US, including our loved ones and all our communities. So what are we seeing? We are witnessing too many families and communities feeling pain, from patients with cancer who cannot afford life-saving medicine, to food banks struggling to keep up with demand because people do not have enough money to buy groceries, to families being separated. As people of faith, we have the moral call to respond with love. We take seriously this call to love our neighbor. It is that love that feeds us and strengthens us and can move us from inaction to inspiration to vote in the 2026 elections and beyond. As many justice seekers may recognize, See.Love.Vote takes inspiration from See, Judge, Act, a framework of Catholic social teaching that has guided how we reflect on the world around us and take action for positive change. But as you will hear tonight, this effort is multi-faith. All our traditions seek to build a better, inclusive future for all our communities. And when people of faith work together, we are unstoppable. With See.Love.Vote, we call each other to participate responsibly for the common good, and to vote so we may all shape this beautiful democracy and place we call home to its fullest at this, our country's 250th anniversary. Thank you all for being part of this endeavor. I will start the program tonight with a programming note. Martin Sheen could not be with us tonight, but we look forward to catching up with him soon, and we thank him for his leadership. I'd now like to welcome Sandra Coles-Bell, Executive Director of the National Black Sisters Conference, and Harris Taryn, Vice President of Policy and Programming of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. They will lead us in opening prayers. Welcome, Sandra and Harris.
This gathering to launch the Network Advocates work of See.Love.Vote. Let us invoke the words of Thea Bowman, our sister and leader. Telling the true truth is our responsibility. We gather to remember the true truth that is being removed from the history of the United States and within our communities. That the true truth is that we Americans, all Americans who give their backs, their toil, their steps, their lives in the fight for freedom, true truth of the inalienable rights that had and have been denied, and the continuing courage to speak truth to power, trusting in our God who calls each of us to act justly, to love mercifully, and to walk humbly in solidarity. Let us pray. God of justice, give us the eyes to see what we do not want to see. Give us the heart to love as you command, even in the face of violence and harm. Give us the shield of truth to vote in the way the gospel demands. We ask you to unleash the power of courage in the face of fear, to be a beloved community where isolation and silence are the easier choice, to have unyielding trust when despair invites inaction. May we be the instruments of the building of your kingdom, honoring the human dignity of each person and calling upon our elected officials to right the wrongs and restore the justice and truth that have been broken. Let us unite in the fire of your promise and walk in your ways. We ask your blessing upon all those gathered tonight and all who will take up this yoke of See, Love, Vote with those ready to stand up and be counted, knowing that the burden is lightened when we walk with you, for you, and in your name. We ask this now and forever. Let us all say, Amen.
Hi, I'm so sorry, Harris. We weren't able to hear you, and we weren't able to unmute you. So we're gonna try that again. If you can press unmute, and then we want to hear your prayer. Thank you.
Of course. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, O God, creator of us all, you created us from a single human family, breathed into each of us your sacred spirit, and honored every person with inherent dignity. We gather today from different faith traditions, united not by sameness, but by a shared commitment to love our neighbors, seek justice, and build a society where every person can flourish. We thank you for calling each of us to be stewards of the common good. Remind us that democracy is not merely a system of government, it is a sacred trust and entrusted to the people. May we carry that trust with humility, courage, and integrity, remembering that the measure of any society is how it treats those who are most vulnerable. Bless this campaign See, love, vote. Open our eyes so that we may truly see one another, not through the lens of fear or division, but through the lens of our shared humanity. Open our hearts so that we may love our neighbors, especially those whose voices are often unheard, whose burdens are too often ignored, and whose dignity is too often overlooked. And strengthen our resolve to vote, not simply as an individual right, but as a sacred responsibility. Remind us that every act of civic participation is an opportunity to stand with our neighbors, to lift the voices of those on the margins, and to shape a society that reflects justice, compassion, and the common good. May we never underestimate the power of one voice joined with many others, nor forget that the lasting change is built not only by leaders, but by ordinary people who choose hope over despair, participation over indifference, and service over self interest. O God of justice and mercy, teach us that faith is not passive. Inspire us to build communities where every person can live with dignity, where children inherit opportunity instead of fear, where the hungry are fed, the stranger is welcomed, and the sick are cared for, and every person knows they belong. May our civic engagement become an expression of our deepest values, transforming our prayers into action and our compassion into lasting change. Guide us to speak the truth with humility, to disagree without hatred, and to serve without power for ourselves. Protect our nation from division, cynicism, and violence, and the temptation to place partisan victory above the well being of our communities. Help us build a society where justice is pursued, mercy is practiced, and peace is not merely hoped for, but actively cultivated. Bless all who dedicate themselves to public service, community organizing, advocacy, and civic engagement. Grant them wisdom when decisions are difficult, perseverance when the work is long, and hope when challenges are overwhelming. O God, unite our hearts in service to one another. Bless this work, bless all who participate in it, and make us instruments of your peace. Amen. And now I'd like to welcome Maya Wiley, the President and CEO of the Leadership Education Fund. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Harris, and thank you for the beautiful opening words. I'm really honored to be with all of you. And I was asked to speak to the role of faith in voting and what we need to pay attention to. And I know all of you who are here already are active, not just as the faithful in terms of whatever faiths you follow, but in terms of faithfulness to the idea of what a multiracial democracy is. Because what we have fought so hard for over generations, and with the moral authority of faith community throughout that fight, whether it was the Quakers on the abolition of slavery, through to the Baptists, through the mid-century of the 20th century, and all of the faith leaders we have worked with in partnership throughout all of it. I shouldn't have even started naming any because I start leaving folks out, and that is a mistake because it has always been a very diverse community that we have had the privilege of working with and through, but for the singular purpose of saying this is a country for all of us. Doesn't matter where we came from, doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is that we are part of the beloved community. And what we are seeing now is nothing short of not just a grotesque attack on the very notion of multiracial democracy, and therefore the power of the people to participate in the selection of leaders. It's fundamentally what we're talking about when we're talking about voting rights, but also the ability to use that vote to raise problems and say how democracy should be trying to solve them for all of us, including when some of our problems are different from one another, or where we have the same problems, but the solutions do not fit us all the same way. And that is one of the things that has been so critical about having voting rights, because as you know, What we did when we created the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and every single reauthorization of voting rights is we said two critical things. First, we said we have to prevent the shenanigans from happening before they do, because once an election happens, it's over. And then if people haven't had a fair opportunity to participate, if they've been gerrymandered, if they've been discriminated against in various ways, just in the rules and how they're administered, then we don't get people being able to select leaders and being able to be represented. The same is true of racial discrimination. Now we've just seen the Calais opinion out of the Supreme Court that frankly was the death knell of what we know to be voting rights legislation that was bipartisanly adopted. But it's deeper than this even, because when we're talking about voting in this cycle and in future cycles, we're actually talking about the participation in people in pushing back on any injustice. As we are seeing, we've got to think about not just how do we get back to a world in which we have rights that are legislated and protected. We have to get back to a world where we're even seen as and valued across our difference, and that we shouldn't be castigated out of the very process of voting, of having the ability to identify ourselves, be who we are, talk about our communities, elevate our problems, and say that we belong. We are actually seeing efforts to lie about particular communities, whether it can be voters are showing up who aren't voters. And in fact, pairing that with the attack on immigrants to suggest that somehow our voting system doesn't work because, big lie, people who are not documented are voting. So what does this mean, though, from a faith standpoint, across our phase, and in terms of how we have to show up and why it is so important to have the moral authority and the diversity of the faith community? One, because it is moral. I could go back to my tradition, which is Christianity, and there are many traditions that would share this, Judaism, but also the fundamental values of saying that what Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. And it really is that simple, is the ability to say to people, you have a right, you have the power, and you shouldn't let anyone make you afraid to use it, is critically important. That's voter education. That's helping folks navigate a system in some states where they're changing so rapidly and constantly from what your election district even is to what you have to do when you show up at the polls before you show up to ensure you're registered, to what you have to do to make sure you have whatever you need to vote. And that varies from state to state. And that means the role that we all have is to make sure that people feel their power, not just to show up, but understand how in showing up, they're able to drop that ballot in the form that they need to, depending on the state. But there's another thing that we have to do now that, again, is so critical with the faith community, and that's we have to protect against all of the voter suppression we're seeing. I want to say to you right now, loudly and clearly, it is unlawful for ICE to be at the polling places. It is simply unlawful. And so we know that the faith community is organizing poll watching and training on de-escalation to ensure that voters aren't suppressed just by the presence, even if ICE is in the neighborhood or the National Guard. It's incredibly important to folks to know they're not alone, to know that there are people watching, to know that there are people there to help within the bounds of the law, peacefully, and in the service of a simple tradition that all of our traditions have, that just say, we're just here to help. And that there's a moral authority to protecting people's rights and ensuring that they have access to do what they get to do. But the other thing that we have to do, and this is new, we have to be prepared for what happens after Election Day. And these are new kinds of threats where we're either seeing efforts to intimidate through criminal prosecution, We at the Leadership Conference, with many of your organizations, are doing tremendous amount of work to make sure organizations are protected in just doing the work of helping voters vote that they're allowed to do. But even after Election Day, we now have to be very prepared as a civil rights community and with the moral authority of faith to protect the ability of votes to be counted and to protect the ability of those who have won fair and square to be seated. So that is, again, about presence. It's about help. It's about support. And it's about willingness to come together across all our differences, whether it's faith, race, geography, and say, we're in this together. And we're not going to let any community be left alone and without the support of all of our communities, whether it's Latino, whether it's Arab American, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Black. We could go down the list, Native American, but these, we know which communities are primarily under attack and whose votes are more likely to be suppressed. So all I'll say to you is this: the moral authority of the faith community is power. The diversity of the faith community is power. And what we have when we work together is nothing short of powerful. And we came this far by faith. And we will get to the future we seek together through our efforts to hold on to what we hold dear in a principled and faith-driven way that says this is all of us, and there is a place for all of us. And however we worship and however we believe, or if we don't believe at all, we know that it is only by holding together that we ensure we have the voice to ensure that there is only the righteous, so that there is no wicked. And that's our job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya, for those powerful words. You've called us into some deep truths, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. So this evening, we are also grateful to have with us 3 panelists to talk about the importance of seeing, loving, and voting. And those 3 panelists are Dr. Olivia Rizzo, fellow at Cleveland Clinic and a member of Doctors for America; Jose Duran, a leader from Escucha Mi Voz, Iowa; and Getzi Hernandez, community organizer at Escucha Mi Voz, who will be interpreting for Jose. And finally, Amaya Tobias, a Sister Carol Costin Fellow who attends Loyola University, New Orleans. Thank you to all of you for being here. Dr. Rizzo, I wanted to start with you to ask the following question. Why, in your view, is awareness of what is going on in our country important for your work? Why is it crucial that we see what is happening?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Olivia Rizzo. I'm a lung doctor and an ICU doctor in a hospital in Cleveland. And I'm here representing myself, my patients, and the Public Health Task Force for Doctors for America. So as an ICU and a lung doctor, my view of the community and what I see is shaped by what I see at the bedside. And there I see undeniable medical consequences of public policy. So I'm taking care of people with asthma flare-ups that are triggered by poor air quality. I see people with chronic conditions like diabetes who have really severe health complications. And these are fueled by food insecurity, financial instability, and lack of transportation. And I actually wasn't sure whose story I was going to share today until I ran into one of my patients earlier this week in the hospital, who I've admitted at least 4 or 5 times in the last year. And these are all for asthma exacerbations. And she's not ending up in the hospital because she likes being in the hospital or because she doesn't care about her health. These are like the most important things to her: being home with her kids and being well. But the first time she was there, she couldn't afford her inhalers. Then she couldn't see me in clinic because she couldn't miss work to make an appointment with me because she had already missed so much work from her admissions. Eventually, she could see me in clinic. I got her started on a new medication. She was out of the hospital for 3 months, which was incredible for her, until last week when we had a heat wave here in Cleveland, and that resulted in poor air quality and air pollution and triggered her asthma again. And so I see these as not a failure of her or her lungs. I see them as a failure of the infrastructure that should exist to allow her to afford her inhalers, miss work for an appointment, and be able to breathe clean air. And in medical school, I learned about these as social determinants of health. But at Doctors for America, we're trying to shift the narrative to refer to this as a social driver of health. This empowers us to think of this as something that's malleable, that can be changed through policy and community action. And so, kind of to summarize about what I see in the exam room is illness, and that's what I treat. But civic engagement and voting is the thing that I see out there in the world that we can use to prevent the illnesses from happening. And this is why it's so important for being aware of what's going on in our country, for doctors and anyone who really cares about their health. We have to acknowledge that all policy is health policy. And when we ignore the social drivers of health, I end up treating the symptoms of bad policy in the ICU. And unfortunately, I realize, after years of taking care of folks, that medicine alone is not enough to keep my patients alive and well. And I have to think bigger and just keep my eyes open on that.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And I know that just that one story represents so many thousands of other similar stories. So now I will move to you, Jose, and I will ask the question with a few different parts.
Okay.
In our country, we've seen that some people are responding to immigrant families and communities with cruelty and violence.
En nuestro país hemos visto cómo se responde a las familias y comunidades inmigrantes con crueldad y violencia.
I have two questions.
Tengo dos preguntas.
Okay.
How do we begin to communicate about the impact of these cruel and violent actions?
¿Cómo podemos empezar a comunicar los impactos de esta crueldad y violencia?
And how do we show a loving response?
¿Y cómo modelamos? ¿Cómo hacemos un ejemplo de una respuesta basada en el amor?
Primeramente, hay tanta violencia y lo estamos viendo en nuestra comunidad latina también.
First, I want to acknowledge that there is a lot of violence, especially towards our Latino community.
Es porque no hay amor en nuestros corazones de parte de las autoridades que deberían de protegernos.
I think that is because there is a lack of love in our hearts, and especially for authorities who are meant to protect us.
Y cuando no tenemos amor en nuestros corazones, solo respondemos con violencia.
And when we don't have that love in our hearts, then that is how we are only responding with cruelty and violence.
Y crueldad a nuestros demás hermanos.
And just cruelty to all of our brothers and sisters.
Nosotros debemos de dar el ejemplo de amor, de ese amor de Dios en nuestros corazones, tratando.
We should be carrying God's love in our hearts and showing that example.
Tratando de dar ejemplo a nuestros demás hermanos en la ayuda, en el respeto, en todo lo que nos da dignidad a nuestra persona a través del amor de Dios.
We can show that example of love through support and helping one another, and through respecting one another, and through fostering that sense of dignity amongst all of us.
Gracias, Jose. Thank you so much, Jose and Getzi. So, Amaya, I'd like to ask you, as a college student, what can you tell us about how your generation relates to voting? How important is it? And what gets your attention?
Voting is really important to Gen Z. I've seen people my age feeling burnt out and aggrieved due to the difficult circumstances we're facing, yet simultaneously having an unbridled enthusiasm to advocate for what we believe in. Being an active voter feels necessary to take control of our own well-being. To not do so feels like doing ourselves a huge disservice. My parents go out to vote for major elections, but then become too worn down by life to bother with much else. They've accepted their life's hardships, but my friends and I think that our parents deserve more, and so do we. In my sophomore year of college, before the 2024 presidential election, I partnered with my school's Student Government Association, the Honors Program, and a nonprofit headcount to conduct a voter registration jamboree for local universities. In organizing the jamboree, I learned that many students were voting to protect their rights. I had a transgender friend tell me his fears of being discriminated against and not being denied proper health care. And many of my friends were voting to ensure a just immigration system. An overwhelming number of students expressed fears of employment and housing insecurity, as well as an upset over improper protections against volatile industries. What gets our attention is that Louisiana's poverty rate is double the national average at 19%, and Louisiana's minimum wage is $7.5 an hour. Meanwhile, we are constantly hearing about new oil, gas, and petrochemical companies receiving tax breaks and economic incentives, such as access to a desperate and poorly educated population in need of employment, to come into our state, extract our resources, and rake in billions. We notice that most people, especially young people, can't afford to rent, let alone buy homes in Louisiana. Both home and renters insurance is extremely high due to our experiences with hurricanes, flooding, and rebuilding costs, as well as a decreasing pool of investors. Even if students don't want to, most settle for working multiple poorly paid jobs outside of their field of study after graduation, or else they relocate to another state for better opportunities. My generation votes so our concerns like these are heard, and we encourage our friends and family to do so as well.
Thank you all so much. I'd like to ask one last question and get see if you can translate.
Voy a hacer una última pregunta.
Okay.
I'll start with you, Dr. Rizzo. Why are you voting in the 2026 midterm election?
Yeah, so I want to kind of go on like the See.Love.Vote theme. So I want to talk about what I love and why I love. And I love being a doctor. I love my community by being there for the best and the worst moments in people's lives. Like just today, I cheered while a patient left the ICU after a long stay for a COPD exacerbation. And then by the afternoon, I held the hand of someone who died of complications of diabetes. And so I love my community by practicing advocacy as preventative medicine at the population level. And loving my patients means fiercely defending safety nets that keep them alive. And one of the safety nets that's extremely important to me this year in the election is Medicaid. So this is a safety net that exists and supports 1 out of 5 Americans. So 1 out of 5 Americans relies on Medicaid for insurance. And if the current administration succeeds with some funding cuts, 41 states could lose their Medicaid expansion, which puts 20 million people at the risk of losing coverage right now, which means more denials of life-saving inhalers, like for my patient, and rural hospitals that are being forced to close their door. They're also proposing some work requirements that are supposed to improve efficiency, but we already know from past attempts that this increases bureaucracy and removes coverage for people who are already working. So like my patient who had to miss work to be in the hospital, she had done everything right and would lose her insurance if the work requirements are implemented or if Medicaid is lost for her entirely. And so this is why I vote. So I know that voting is not going to treat the things that my patients have, but it definitely dictates the policies that determine whether they can afford to live. And the elected officials that we have make these choices that shape our local health and our living conditions. And so my job as a doctor is not to tell someone who to vote for, but I see my role as creating an opportunity for my patients to make their voices heard. And democracy and public health have a similar goal, which is giving everyone an opportunity to be well and thrive. And so that's why I'm voting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rizzo. Some really important reasons to vote. Amaya, I'll turn to you, just a sentence or 3 about why you're voting in the 2026 midterm election.
Plenty of times I've had conversations with friends about where we've expressed anger and fear about the injustices we see in our communities. due to the decisions of elected officials and political appointees. One recent discussion centered around the Supreme Court's decision in April to strike down Louisiana's congressional map, effectively eliminating 2 majority Black districts and weakening the protections of the Voting Rights Act. At the time, my friends and I were volunteer tour guides for a special portable rendition of the historic New Orleans Collections exhibit, The Trail They Blazed, which highlighted local civil rights activism. As volunteers, we had the privilege to speak with Mr. Ronnie Moore, a local civil rights icon and criminal justice reformer. He started activism at the age of 14 and is now 85 years old. And seeing us so upset, we asked him how he was able to stay motivated while seeing that injustices still prevail. Mr. Moore simply told us that he never assumed his work in justice would be a one-and-done deal. He says he advocates for a more compassionate tomorrow, and that if you free yourself from the animosity of time, then you could achieve plenty. He told us he never lets doubt kill his faith, he never lets despair crush his hope, and he never lets fear erase his love. In fact, he says that love is the greatest challenge that conquers all. This is what I see in my generation and my fellow college students. We love ourselves, we love each other, and we choose to walk in faith, hope, and love. And that's why we vote. And that's why I will be voting.
Thank you so much, Amaya. And finally, Jose, why are you voting in the 2026 election?
Primeramente, para que mi voz sea escuchada.
Mainly so that my voice can be heard.
Y para que mi comunidad sea más fuerte.
And so that my community is stronger.
Y es por eso que también nosotros en nuestra comunidad estamos llevando un proyecto.
And that is why in my community we started a project.
De poder ayudar a los latinos que no hablan inglés o no entienden el idioma.
To help Latinos who might not have English as a first language or understand English that well.
Para poder ayudarles a ejercer el voto.
To help them understand their right to vote and register to vote.
Porque solo a través de nuestros votos es que se nos escucha nuestra voz en el gobierno y para poder recibir todos los beneficios que también necesitamos como comunidad.
And because through voting we can make our voices heard and create change at the government level so that we can receive those resources and benefits that we need in our communities.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all 3 of you for your insights and your moving words. So we'll now move to the next part of our program where we are joined with 2 of our wonderful See.Love.Vote partners. First, Jamie Baran, the Chief Executive Officer of Bend the Arc. And also with us is Bishop Julius C. Trimble, General Secretary of the General Board of Church and Society, United Methodist Church. So great to have both of you join us. I'd like to ask you both, and we'll start with you, Jamie. Since this campaign, See.Love.Vote, is ultimately about moving people to action, can you tell us what has moved you? And what are the values of your faith tradition that have motivated your organization to join See.Love.Vote?
Thank you so much, Lori, and to all of our friends at Network. Network and Bend the Arc have been in partnership for well over a decade, so I'm really honored to be on this call tonight. And it's been wonderful to watch that partnership really organically grow and deepen over these past few years because of our shared commitment to organizing our faith communities to work towards justice right now. And I can say honestly that signing on to sponsor See.Love.Vote was truly one of our easiest yeses in a long time because it's so deeply aligned with the work that we're doing. Bend the Arc is a movement of progressive Jews across the country, and our tradition has a lot to say about what it means to build a just society together. And democracy and voting are core communal obligations, and they're really anchored by our texts and traditions. And so I want to lift up a few of those points of inspiration that have led us to want to do this work. So first in the Torah, it says, tzedek, tzedek, tirdaf, which means justice, justice you shall pursue. This is like a core justice teaching that we come back to over and over. And we repeat ourselves because the pursuit of justice must be relentless. And the process of seeking justice must itself be just. And Rabbi Yitzchak taught in the Talmud that a ruler is not to be appointed unless the community is first consulted. which is literally just a call for free and fair elections, right? So free and fair elections are not transactional. They're actually an expression of our covenantal obligation to one another. And in Jewish terms, that's how we achieve a society where everyone is recognized as being B'Tselem Elohim, made in the image of God, and where therefore the voices of people at the margins are made to matter as much as everyone else's. And so for me, and what also motivates me beyond these important kind of core texts of ours, is that this moment calls for my community to not only understand, but to act from an understanding that Jewish safety is inseparable from the health of our democracy, because Jews are safest in democracies where all rights are protected. And also, we know right now that there are a lot of bad actors who are using the Jewish community in very specific ways to push undemocratic agendas and singling out and dividing Jews from our allies and pitting our safety against the safety of immigrants, of BIPOC folks, of activists, Palestinians, so many more. And that is a strategy that threatens all of our safety, and it actually makes the Jewish community itself less safe as well. It's a false promise of safety. And so it's up to Jews and to Jewish leaders like me to resist this strategy and to work to deepen relationships across differences and with other faith communities, to see through that chaos and confusion and to support others to do the same. And we have to do that through active solidarity. And so I see Network's campaign as calling us to see and recognize one another's dignity, to center love as our motivator for acting for the common good, and to vote as our way of expressing that commitment to the common good. And so I'm really honored to be part of calling our communities into this holy work together. So thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And Bishop Trimble, I'll just repeat the question. Since this campaign is about moving people to action, if you could share what has moved you and what the values of your faith tradition are that have motivated your organization to join See.Love.Vote.
Well, I want to echo Jamie, and this was an easy yes for us at the United Methodist General Board of Church and Society. And thank you, Lori, for the question. I come from a long line of Methodists, but we work ecumenically and interfaith and have for many, many years. In our tradition, we believe that faith translated into action is really the greatest magnification of love itself. So God not only calls us to love God and love neighbor, but to express that love in ways that demonstrate justice. So every day when I come into the building where I work, on the ceiling are the words of the prophet Micah: do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. So this was an easy call and a call that we want to magnify, not only to love, but to see people, as you started the program on with, not only to see people, but to express love, and then to exercise our right to demonstrate love through voting.
Well, thank you both so much for your partnership and your leadership and your work for the common good. So now we are going to hear from two of our advocate team members about what they are seeing in their local communities and why they are engaging in seeing and loving and voting. Annie and Bob Kaczurek are part of Network's Ohio Advocates team. Annie and Bob, welcome.
Hello, fellow justice seekers. My name is Bob Kaczurek. This is my wife, Annie, and we live in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And we are seeing what you are seeing. Grocery store prices are outrageous. People are having trouble finding affordable housing. Access to quality health care has been taken away from millions. State and federal policies are making it harder to vote. And CEO compensation is rising exponentially while the wages of workers are stagnating. And as a means of political manipulation, some people in power they continue to create an atmosphere of mistrust, fear of those who do not look like us, do not worship like us, and do not live in our neighborhoods. So many of these issues stem from morally gray, insensitive leaders and bad policies on the local, state, and national levels. So how do we turn this around? As people of faith, the power of love can strengthen us. Elections are powerful ways to build communities where all are heard and cared for. Voting then becomes faith in action. We need to utilize every possible strategy to urge fellow voters not to be overwhelmed, but to care enough to actually vote this November. After the 2024 election, Annie and I were struck by something our congressional representative stated at a town hall meeting. She said, "The problem was not that we needed to register more people to vote. The problem was that millions of registered voters didn't bother to show up on election day." And that's where you come in. Annie?
So the See.Love.Vote campaign will provide you with many ways to effectively reach out to others. Perhaps our personal experiences can provide you with a few ideas. Over our years as network advocates, Bob and I have created personal email signatures that include an encouragement to vote and links with more information. We have saved network information sheets like the checklist so we can easily add them as attachments to emails. I helped to organize a prayer walk in downtown Cleveland last year for immigration. On social media, Bob has reposted many network posts and created many of his own to educate others. We have hosted information tables at community events like Juneteenth and at monthly coffee and donuts at our church. Working with our parish staff, we've also used the church bulletin to spread the word about local events and national campaigns. We have worked with a racial equity task group at our church to multiply our effectiveness. And we have frequently written letters to the editor to our city's newspaper. And we've made many, many phone calls to congressional offices. We've also invited friends over for a fun evening of zine folding. The booklets were then distributed to neighbors and at No King rallies. Bob and I are able to lean on each other for support, and we urge you to find like-minded people to help you as well. If we can do this, you can do this. And together we can see, love, and vote. And now I'd like to introduce Sister Eilish McCullough, the Grassroots Education and Organizing Coordinator at Network. Sister Eilish is going to tell you specific ways you can get involved with See.Love.Vote this summer and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob and Annie, and thank you so much for setting up what I am going to talk about. Listening to our wonderful speakers tonight reminds me that we are rooted in community and that we bring all of our stories, our families, our neighbors, our communities with us and when we vote. But now there's something for everyone to do right now to participate in See.Love.Vote and get ready for the November election. First, I invite you to go to www.networkadvocates.org/vote. On our website that I encourage you to share with everyone in your network, you can first check your own voter registration status, or if you're voting for the first time, you can register to vote. Once you've checked your own registration status, share the link with your friends and family members, your colleagues, so that they too can check their voter registration status or register to vote. This is easy and will only take you a couple of minutes. Then if you scroll down past the voter registration boxes that you see on that webpage, you can download our See.Love.Vote checklist and our About the See.Love.Vote campaign page. Both of these are available in English and Spanish. Share them with your friends. Share them at coffee and donuts after Mass or any other place that you might be going. The first place that you can use these resources is next week at Good Trouble Lives On Weekend of Action. This is taking place from July 17th to 20th. Visit goodtroubleliveson.org to see if an event is happening in your area. If you go, don't forget to take those See.Love.Vote checklists and other materials on our website and share them with other attendees. And please, please, please take some pictures of yourself at the event and share them with Network. As one of the people on the grassroots mobilization team, I can say that we all love to see pictures of what you are doing out in the field and to be able to share them in our Connection magazine and on social media. Your next opportunity to engage with See.Love.Vote is during the first part of our election education training series, which will take place on July 21st or 22nd. This training series will start out with a training webinar led by our network communications team member, Virginia. And in it, she will share some best tips and practices for messaging about See.Love.Vote. A registration link and more information about this important training will be in your follow-up email. Finally, watch your email and social media opportunities for more opportunities to participate in Network's See.Love.Vote GOTV postcard effort. We'll send you postcards, a list of addresses, and other important information to help you send C3 nonpartisan postcards to people across the country. This opportunity will land in your inbox at the beginning of August. On behalf of all of my colleagues, thank you, thank you, thank you for your continued action and your participation in See.Love.Vote. And I would now like to welcome Sister Carol Zinn, who is a sister of St. Joseph of Philadelphia and serves as the executive director of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. Welcome, Sister Carol.
Thank you so much, Sister Elise. Well, I don't know about you, but we've heard such rich input tonight from persons. You can just feel the passion and the professional expertise and the dedication. And as I listened, I wondered, where does all that come from? Where does all of that focus and integrity and impetus originate? And the whispered answer that I heard sounded like it comes from the depth of one's soul and spirit and psyche and social consciousness. And that made me question, so what is the why of that kind of living, that kind of remaining resilient and holding steadfast to the call of the spirit? So why is it our responsibility to participate in this election through voting and engaging with others? I'd like to offer 3 S's for each one of those letters of the word why, W-H-Y. So the first one, W. The first S is Simon Sinek, who's an international leadership mentor, says that more than 95% of the successful businesses can clearly explain what they do and how they do it. Everything from Apple to Ford to Amazon to the airlines. But less than 3% can explain why they do it, other than to feed the bottom line, of course, for their shareholders. The work of leadership is to live and lead from your why, says Simon. So why do we participate in this election? Perhaps in new ways to us because of the times in which we're living. We participate because the why of our faith and citizenship life demands that we do so. Second S, for the letter H, sacred texts. Every faith tradition and indigenous and spiritual expression holds that there's a higher power to which we are drawn, and in whose vision we have a role. This holy energy needs us, invites us, actually expects us to be a participant and not a spectator in the creating of communities of love and mercy and justice and compassion and peace and respect for human dignity. Everything from you did it to me, to the Good Samaritan, to the way we are with each other is the way we are with the Divine One, to everything is connected and whatever happens to someone else happens to all of us, to we have a choice right now as humanity, in the recent words of Pope Leo, to either build a Tower of Babel or to build a community in the manner of Nehemiah, with the skills of encountering each other, of listening deeply to each other, and then discerning together, how do we make the common good common for all of us? And the third and final letter of why, the word why, the why itself. This third and final S is a personal story, and I hope you don't mind if I share it. It's 30 years old, but as I listen tonight, it still feels really current now. My grandniece was only 2 when my dad died. She could never say Aunt Carol, so she called me Carmel. And the day my dad died, my brother came over with her to relieve me for the hospice care that we were providing for both my parents, and he brought Katie. So I went upstairs to rest with one eye and ear fully open, as you do in those kinds of end-of-life moments. A few minutes later, I heard Katie coming up the steps, so I kept my eyes closed. Then I felt her stretched out on top of me, holding my face in her chubby little hands. And her nose was touching mine, and she whispered, Carmel, 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 are you in there? Well, of course I laughed, and I opened my eyes, and she, still right in front of me, says, are you happy, Carmel? And I said, yes. And she, as clear as anything, she did a push-up on the pillow, looked right down at me, and she said, well, good, because Daddy and Papa need you downstairs right now. My brother sent her up to get me, and we sat on each side of my dad for the next 4 hours and loved him into eternity. I think Katie's questions are for us also, as we ask ourselves, why is it our responsibility to participate in this election? Are you in there? Am I in there? Am I really behind my eyes? Do we know this historical moment that is writing us? And do we finally have the courage to tell the true truth and fully engage in this process? Her second question, are you happy? And the mystics and the Sufis understand that hope and joy are interior twins that ready us for a marathon of fidelity to our true selves. Optimism and happiness are external twins that change with the tides of daily life because they only have the capacity for sprinting from one reality to the next. These external twins aren't bad, they're simply not enough for the depth of living and loving and learning that is needed now. This election cycle and the ones in the future and even beyond 2028 need to be fueled by hope and joy, because these are authentic, transparent, welcoming nutrients, and they're in very short supply today, everywhere. And finally, when Katie said, well, good, because you're needed downstairs, I think our answer is yes, good, because our families and our neighborhoods, our communities, our cities, states, country, church, the world, they need you. They need me right now, not tomorrow, but now, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. So may we hear the whisper of the Holy One who provides everything we need to be the ones who live our lives from the why of our spirit, so that who we are and what we do always builds the beloved community, even and maybe especially in a political election process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Carol, for your soul-stirring words. You've really left us with so much to think about, and I don't know how we could say no to what you are asking us to do. It's beautiful. When we began here at Network thinking about what See.Love.Vote could be, we knew that we could only do this in partnership and community with all of you. We know that together we are people of unity, power, love, and solidarity. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and to all of you who are joining with us tonight from across the country, both for being here tonight and for working with us in the days and months ahead. As you heard from Sister Eilish, See.Love.Vote has a menu of easy actions. And even if you have very little time, you can do them. So please do check out the website and keep an eye out for social media and emails. If everyone here just took one action, whatever is right for you, we will make a huge impact for the common good, and we will inspire so many others as well. Before we go, I would like to invite you to donate to Network Advocates and this education campaign. If you are moved by what we are doing together and you're able to do so, please do donate. You can see a link on your screen, and thank you. Finally, in closing, Network board member Sister Robbie Pentecost, a sister of St. Francis of Oldenburg, Indiana, will offer a final blessing and commissioning. Sister Robbie, welcome and thank you for sending us forth.
Amen, amen, amen. What an energizing and motivating gathering. Sisters and brothers, as we go forth today, may we be energized by our collective commitment to see the presence of God in one another, to love without exception, and to vote with courage and hope. May our hearts remain open to the voices that are deliberately silenced. May our words build bridges where there is division. And may our actions reflect our shared belief that every person matters and every community deserves to flourish. As we launch See.Love.Vote, may this campaign inspire meaningful conversations, faithful engagement, and a deep commitment to the common good. May we approach this election season with curiosity instead of fear, compassion instead of contempt, and conviction rooted in justice and in love. And as we go forth, let us be instruments of peace, seekers of truth, and builders of hope. And let us all say, Amen.